Hello, I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to be talking about a roll and write game by the name of Anubixx. This is designed by Stefan Bendorf, put out by NSV, a German company, although it does come with English rules in the box. It's a 2019 release for 2 to 5 players. Plays in about 15, maybe 20 minutes with more players. The game is a roll and write dice-based game where players are going to be playing Egyptian architects who are constructing various monuments for points. The game's really simple. I could take a few minutes to show you how it plays, and I'll come back, let you know what I think about it. So Anubixx is a roll and write game that's set in ancient Egypt where players are going to be playing architects who are trying to complete these 3 monuments. The game comes with a score pad. Each player will get a sheet from this. Because they're finite, I just created a laminated version of it. And it also comes with a pencil that each player could use, as well as 4 dice. These are just standard 6-sided dice that have different colors on each side. And so the game's going to be a dice game where players are going to roll these dice and use them to fill in correspondingly colored sections of these 3 monuments. So the turn structure of the game is essentially that each turn there's going to be an active player who's going to roll the dice, choose some of those dice from the pool. They could technically choose 0, but generally they'll take 2 of them from the pool. They could maybe just take 1. And they would use that to mark spaces on their score sheets. And then these other dice will be left for the other player, so every other player would have access to these dice, which they could then use to mark their score sheet. I should note that in a 2-player game, you'll only roll 3 dice each turn, so the active player might pull 2 out, and the other player will only have access to 1 die. So when you're choosing how to mark your score sheet, the 3 sections of the score pad, and let me just zoom out a slight bit, are going to have different scoring rules and different filling in rules. So you can see this this arch here. The rules for this are essentially that you have to complete the legs before you cap it off with this top piece, and the legs are going to be worked on from bottom up. So I could do this orange, and this green, then this yellow, then this red, and I could work on these 2 legs independently. The only rule is that the last piece has to be that up here. The pyramid works sort of similarly in that you have to fill in the bottom 2 spaces before you fill in a space that would rest on top of it. So for example, this blue and yellow have to be filled in before I could fill in this purple. This purple and orange have to be filled in before I could fill in the blue. So that's pretty simple. And then the last space down here, this space requires you to fill in 2 spaces simultaneously that are adjacent to each other. So for example, I could do this on a turn, the green and yellow, or this green and orange, both as one, on one turn. So again, you're only going to be filling in at most 2 blocks on any of these grids during a turn. If you're doing the bottom section, both of your blocks have to be down here. The other 2 you could do on the same section, or you could split them. So like I said, you're going to roll the dice to determine what colors you have access to, but along the bottom here, you're going to have access to additional dice, essentially, or additional building materials. So at the start of the game, based on the number of players, you're going to cross out some of these, but these are going to be wilds that you have. So in a 2-player game, you would cross out these, you'd only get 2 of them, but in a 5-player game, you get 5 over the course of the game. And then secondly, so these could stand in for any die. So for example, if I wanted to cross out this orange and green, there's only a green here, I would take the green die out if I was the active player, and then I could cross out a wild here to stand in for the orange. It would cost me 1 of my wilds. The second thing that you have is this quarry down here, and you can see this is going to be a multicolored row. And I should note that each player is going to get a different score sheet, which will have different organization of that row down there, as well as a different arrangement of the colors in the monuments themselves. So players will generally want to look for different dice colors at different times. And there's a mark on each sheet, so you could tell the sheets apart, so each player just gets a different letter. So back to the quarry here. So the way that this works, let's say I needed a red die because I wanted to cross out maybe 2 reds. I could take this one, and then I need another one. Instead of using this wild, I could cross out the red here in my quarry, and then I would have access to that die. The rule for this is, though, let's say on my next turn I needed a green for some reason, I could go ahead and take the green, and you see there's this arrow here pointing to the right. If I take the green, I would just cross out the green, the next one in line. But now I've skipped over this orange. I've essentially lost access to this. So one of the biggest strategic considerations of this game is going to be using this row of colors wisely. So if for my next turn I needed a red, I would have to go all the way down to here. I would lose access to these here. And another consideration is at the end of the game you're going to get points for anything to the right of your last X. So all of these would get me points if the game ended right now. So the way the game does end is when a single player has completed 2 of their 3 monuments in total. That would trigger the end of the game for all players. Then you're going to essentially do a scoring. So first thing I'll mention about the scoring is as you're progressing up these monuments and filling them in, you'll hit certain symbols. So you can see here we have an eye in this space here. The first player to get that will announce to other players, I've got the eye. They'll be able to circle that, and other players will have to scribble that out. Each symbol that you're going to get in that manner is going to be worth 3 points at the end of the game. If multiple people complete one of those symbols at the same round, they all get the points, but then any future players would not get those points. Some of the symbols only appear once. Up here, those 5 symbols only appear once. Down at the bottom here, you have to get both of these palm trees or all 3 of these pots to qualify for that special scoring. So those are just marked here at the top. You'll also get essentially a similar bonus if you're the person who triggers the end of the game, which means you've completed 2 of the monuments. And if multiple people do that in the same round, they'll all get that bonus. So the other way that things are going to score is essentially based on the numbers that are printed on the board here. So essentially here you would look at your lowest and I could just show you here on a score pad that we use to play. Here you look at your, essentially if you complete this you get 12. If you, for example, only had those filled in, you didn't have these top 2 on the left here, you would just get the highest value filled in. So for example, if I didn't have this yellow filled in or anything above it, I would get just 4 points for this because the green would be my highest regardless of how high the other one was. The pyramid, you get essentially the point for your single highest block, again respecting that building rule that you've built from the bottom up. So here, if you complete your pyramid, you get 21 points, but if your highest brick was in this row and you get to the top, you get 13 points. And down here, you'll get points based on the number of blocks that you have crossed out at the end of the game, and you can see you could get up to 15 points for that. So the scoring is essentially that you're going to get your points for your 3 monuments. You'll get 3 points for each of these bonuses that you've got, including the endgame bonus. Then you'll get 2 points for any wilds that you have left over, as well as 1 point. Any wilds that you have left over, as well as 1 point for any of these unused bricks in your quarry. Whoever has the most points then will be the winner. Okay, so that is Anubixx, and I should just preface this by saying that this game is co-designed by Stefan Bendorf. He is the designer of a fairly famous dice game by the name of Qwixx, which has come out, maybe 5 years ago or so, and really has been one that has endured. And I'm not sure that I would expect this game to endure in a similar manner. It's perfectly pleasant to play, and it only takes about 15 minutes, so I don't necessarily expect it to be deeply strategic, but it definitely is not deeply strategic. You are going to, be faced with, a lot of choices at the beginning of the game, and near the end your choices are going to be winnowing as you have fewer places to put your dice just by nature of trying to work up a pyramid, or by covering up spaces on this floor down here. You'll have fewer options, and you could certainly plan a little bit as you're selecting dice. Maybe I want to pick the dice that are going to set up my next move, so maybe I'll use the next space down here as opposed to having to jump several spaces down here. And I think that's really where the strategy of the game lies, in managing this row and your wilds effectively. But it's not incredibly taxing to do that, and to a certain degree you're at the mercy of what gets rolled each turn and what the active player takes. So sometimes I guess there's also the decision to fill in only one or none of the blocks because you want to preserve these for later. But again, these are really minor decisions, and I don't know that this game really offers you a way to really rush the end game and surprise other players in a way that might give you more than one strategic option. Here, every player is going to be trying to cross out as many of the things as they can each turn. So it does limit the amount of strategy that the game seems to have. That being said, it's not particularly a game that I don't enjoy. I'm perfectly fine with it for what it is at 15 minutes, but this is now a fairly crowded genre of the roll and write genre, and it doesn't necessarily stack up to the giants of the genre. But this was, I have to say, I think €8 or something like that. So it's something that I think every once in a while I'd be perfectly happy pulling out, playing, and it's a game that you could easily chat and socialize with while you're playing it. It's definitely on that level that it's not at all taxing. So for what it is, it's perfectly fine. I do think there are better roll and writes out there, but yeah, I guess that's really my take on Anubixx. Thanks for watching.